Okay, so is this setting up the machine or starting the enlargement? I'm not sure which. But the first task is I have to securely mount the half-size model on the turntable. So I'm going to make a wooden backing for it that I can firmly clamp to one of these octagonal tables. Probably a lot of you have never seen a saw like this. This is the only one I've ever seen, but I've had it for decades. I love it.
The motor and the arbor are fixed to the frame, so you tilt the top to adjust the blade angle.
And raise and lower the table to adjust the depth of cut rather than moving the saw blade. Makes for a very lightweight, compact saw for its the amount of power that it has, but it's a very strange arrangement to modern eyes. It's called an Inca, and they went out of business a number of years ago. These easels for holding up the original model and the enlargement are really just, plain old Douglas fir from the hardware store. They're held together with glue and 2.5-inch construction screws. I don't know if you can see it here, but I'm actually drilling first through the first 1.5 inches for the screws. Then I run some wax over the screws so they go in easy and just drive them in through the so they sort of turn easily through the first layer of wood and then really bite on the second. So the back of the plaster model is really just the way it was left with the rubber paddle that I was applying the plaster with. So it's not very flat. So I took a surf-form plane here and just sort of quickly ground it, reasonably flat. Now I'm just positioning it so that the center of mass vertically is approximately over the center of rotation of the turntable. I'm not sure what I was thinking when I made the source and target tables the same size. Obviously, if I'm doing 2-to-1 enlargement, it would make sense to have the second table be twice as big, and so I'm just going to remake a second table that's a target table that's 21 inches, I guess, whatever twice that is. So I'm just going to make it also an octagon. I'm not going to go draw a detail about how I'm doing this. Just it's really just the double size of the other one. The regular arm saw is something not everybody these days has seen either. It's pretty old-fashioned. These were big back in the, I guess, in the 50s and 60s. They've sort of fallen out of favor now, but I just happened to have this one because it was part of an insurance settlement. But I don't know that I would ever buy one if it was going to cost anything, but it was a replacement. So once I get this table on there, the idea is that I'm going to use the pantograph to mark the corners of where the model enlarges to on the target table, and then I'll position that the wooden easel accordingly, plus or minus some space for styrofoam backing. I'm going to use a styrofoam armature underneath all this clay. So there I've got one point projected over, and now just rotate the model, rotate the table, and the corresponding point on the other side of the model should land in just the right place. And sure enough, there it is. So that's sort of where the back corner is going to go, and you'll see I'll adjust a little bit for the thickness of the styrofoam. But there's my easel, and now I'm just going to verify with the pantograph that my lines are correct that I've drawn. Make sure I've got this at the right place, the right angle, and so on. So here I'm checking it against the position of the model, and it seems to be working out so far. So I'm going to glue up that a plank a couple of layers thick and fasten it to the backboard. Now I haven't actually done this before with this. I've used styrofoam as a base, but I've never done anything quite like this. So I'm basically just experimenting here. I'm going to mostly glue it together, and I'll end up holding it together different ways. Some of it I'm going to glue and then just tie together with rope and some blocks to put pressure on it overnight while it dries. And other stuff I'll wire it together with iron wire so I can just keep working on it. So I'll just be using a bunch of different techniques for sort of holding this all together. Once it's all in place, sitting up there, I really don't think I'll have much problem because it'll all be wired together then, and there'll be clay all over it, so it's not like it's going to fall apart. So I've taken measurements. I don't know if you can see what I've done. I've taken measurements of like where her right hip is and her left leg, and sort of the things that define the contours of her body. And I'm laying in these strips of styrofoam to build up mass that covers everything I want to be armature under those regions. So I can easily cut this stuff away with a hot knife. I just want to make sure I've got it covered well enough. So that's the width of her hips and leg, I guess, at the widest part. So I'm just overlapping these in two different directions so that they for maximum strength. So I cut these vertical strips to width by just measuring the points on the model body and then doubling it. And now I'm positioning them relative to the side of the backboard using the pantograph. And I'm gluing them together, and then I'm going to wrap rope around them to just hold them in position, until they've dried. Actually, assembling this is going pretty fast, so I think I'm going to end up replacing the ropes with wires. But the intention here was just to hold them together overnight. So this is really just going to be an iterative process of taking measurements and then cutting some blocks and gluing them on, somehow fastening them so the glue will dry. The pantograph's super simple to use, but there's a little bit of skill in sort of remembering to position all the degrees of freedom optimally so that you're coming at each point from the ideal angle. I tend to forget that I can swing the arm up and down, I can rotate the arm, I can swing the pantograph, and I can rotate the table. So that's 4 different degrees of freedom to sort of pick the right point to come at your piece from. Now I'm using the pantograph to sort of draw the outlines of where she is on that back panel as well. That's what I'm doing with the Sharpie pencil right there. So here comes a hot knife. Somebody borrowed my studio a couple of years ago to build some big pieces for the windows at Macy's, the Christmas windows. And she left this hot knife behind, didn't want it anymore. So I never thought I'd use it, but here we go. It works like a dream. It just slices right through this styrofoam, and you can kind of shape it at any angle. Puts out god-awful fumes though, so I've had to go over and set up a fan in the window, and now it's got a pretty steady breeze pulling the fumes out the door. But man, is it nasty. You gotta have ventilation for this. I'm carving with the knife, but notice you see me poking holes in it. What I'm doing is running holes right through all the, 6 or 7 layers of this to the backboard, and then I'm using wire to tie it together, and that's to pull all the styrofoam together while the glue inside dries. Otherwise, it takes literally days for the sort of moisture to go out of the glue.
So here's a spot where the styrofoam, it actually sticks up too far. The back is too thick here. So I'm just cutting down until the probe from the pantograph will go all the way in without encountering styrofoam. So I've already started sort of carving it back. Again, I don't really care if there's a little bit too much, but here on the side I needed to add more, so I'm putting in these 3-inch by 3-inch section. I don't know if you can see it, but I used the pantograph to make some marks where her hand runs down her side and so on, and now I'm just using the hot knife to carve away excess styrofoam. There's dozens of places where I've used wire to pull things together, so I'm just running around and cutting off all the 3, 4, or 5-inch long wires that are sticking out, just waiting to poke somebody in the eye. After that, it's largely a matter of just going over it with the pantograph and the hot knife, just slicing away all the places where the styrofoam is sticking up a little bit too high. I'm aiming for like a 1/2 inch of clay, 3/4 inch of clay, something like that. If there's a big hole, I don't mind. I can just fill it up with clay if it's not worth putting a styrofoam block in. And then I'm going to ultimately take the hot knife and scratch up and make lots of little holes and stuff in the surface to give the clay something to grip to. The hot knife works much better on sort of virgin styrofoam. Once it's been cut and the hot knife's been applied to it, it gets kind of a hard shell that doesn't cut as nicely and smoothly. That's about it for the armature. There's maybe a little more scoring to do. It looks like I only did the left side, and I need to get a few other smooth areas. I want to put some teeth in it so the clay will grab it. Other than that, we're ready to start applying the clay and seeing if we can make this look like something very exciting. See you guys next time.